Hello, how are you? I'm so glad you're here. So today I thought we'd talk a bit more about the idea of pain in relation to the danger that your brain perceives you to be in. So we talked about that a wee bit in the last video, and I thought it might be worth exploring that a wee bit more. So just to remember, the phrase that we mentioned a few times is that pain is always a representation of how much danger your brain perceives you to be in at that given time. So that has quite a big implication for things, because what we're saying is not that pain is always a representation of how much danger or damage is going on in your body, but it's a representation of how much danger or damage your brain perceives that's going on. So that's quite a different thing. There's two examples that are often used regarding this, and you'll have heard them elsewhere if you've looked into this type of work at all. I said that they're used because they are two very good examples of putting the message across as to what we're talking about. So I'm going to tell you a wee bit about those two examples today. So if you've heard them before, apologies. It'll just reinforce it a wee bit for you again. And for those of you that haven't heard it before, then it might give you a wee bit more of an insight into what we're talking about the perception, rather than the actual damage or danger. So both examples relate to construction workers, and these are real examples. They're not made up stories. These are actual examples of situations that occurred. So it's not just we made up stories, that actual real clinical situations. So the first example we'll talk about, as I say, they both relate to construction workers. So the first one is a construction worker. He's on the building site and he's walking along and he looks down and he realises he's stepped on a nail, and the nail has come right through his big work boot and is poking out the top of his boot. So he immediately starts screaming. The pain is excruciating. He's, falling over. He's calling for his workmates to come and help him. He's, inconsolable. So much pain, has to be taken to A&E to get proper treatment for this terrible pain he's in, to get his foot seen to. So he gets taken into A&E. He's in so much pain they can barely assess him, so they have to sedate him. It's really strong medication. So they get him sedated, a bit calmer, so they can actually examine the foot, and they take off his boot, and they find that actually the nail has passed between his toes and there isn't a scratch on his foot. So this man has experienced considerable pain. I mean, it's not just a wee bit of a bump at all. It's considerable pain there, to the point that they've had to sedate him with quite significant medication in order to examine his foot. But there's no actual physical injury to his foot. So what's going on there? Well, if you think back to what we said, the amount of pain, your pain is always the perception of your brain as to how much danger or damage it perceives is going on at that one time. So pain is not a representation of how much damage or danger you are in. It's a representation of your brain's perception of how much damage or danger you're in. So if you think of that situation, the man's in a building site, which is quite a hazardous, dangerous place to be, albeit it's his place of work and he's used to being there. Nonetheless, it is a hazardous place to be, and he'll be aware of that. So he'll have safety equipment, he'll have his hard hat, he'll have his big boots on that he had, different equipment there to keep him safe, because, everybody's quite aware, I think, that construction sites are dangerous places to be. So if you think of that, he's in a hazardous environment. He looks down and visually he's getting feedback that this large pointy metal nail has gone through from one end of his boot, one side of the boot to the other. So his brain is going to interpret that as a very dangerous situation, and rightly so. It is potentially a very dangerous situation. So if we take those things into account, then his brain is making a decision about the situation, that he's in danger, that he's damage to his body, he's at risk, it has to protect him from further danger and damage, and therefore produces pain, which makes him seek out help that he requires. But in actual fact, there's no damage. So his pain is real, and we're not in any way saying his pain isn't real. And we wouldn't be saying that he's making it up in any way. His pain is real because he feels the pain, but there is no damage there. The pain has been produced by the brain because the brain has perceived him to be at risk, for him to be in danger, and therefore to keep him safe, which is the brain's primary function, is to keep us alive and safe. It has produced the pain. So the other example, again, also construction, because we're saying it's always quite a hazardous situation, hazardous environment. So the other example is another workman is working away, and he's using a nail gun, and he's using his nail gun along, and the nail gun backfires, and the nail comes out and it ricochets off the wall. So he gets a bit of a jolt. Oh, goodness, okay. But he carries on. He saw the nail come out and went to the wall, so he carries on, checks that the machine's working okay, and he carries on. And later that day, he's home with his family, and he feels got a headache, so not feeling 100%, a pain about his facial area, but he doesn't think much of it, and he carries on. But this goes on and on and on. In a couple of days, and he's saying to his wife, I think I'm going to maybe see the dentist, this kind of pain in my jaw, my face, I better go and see the dentist. So he goes to the dentist examines him, gets an x-ray done, and to the great surprise of both of them, they find that actually there's a nail has embedded itself into his bone, into his skull, and actually is narrowly missing his brain. But that man felt no pain. So what's different there? Well, in that situation, again, if you think what we're saying about the amount of pain produced is always in relation to your brain's perception of how much danger or damage there is. That man is using the nail gun, so it misfires, something goes wrong, but he sees, his visual input is, oh, I saw the nail come out, it hit off the wall, or it went wherever it went. So as far as his brain's concerned, he's not at risk because he has seen where the rogue nail has gone. Presumably an extra one came out or something, but anyway, in that situation, his brain doesn't perceive there to be a great danger because he can account for where the rogue nail has gone. So the brain makes an assessment, and it doesn't perceive there to be a great risk to him there, and no pain is produced at the time. But then over time, obviously because it is lodged in his face, the pain does come about because there is tissue damage there. There is damage to his tissue, and he goes and seeks help. But again, it's not in an urgent way, not like the man with the nail through the foot who was in significant pain and had to get emergency treatment. So they're both, as I say, widely cited examples, that probably the two most commonly used examples about trying to show the connection between the brain and pain, because they're quite clear and you can imagine both situations. And I think the one with the man, the nail in his boot, most obviously you can picture that situation, and the shock there would be when they then removed the boot and found that actually it hadn't touched his foot at all. How can he be in so much pain where there's no damage? And the flip side is the other man. How can he just have a bit of a kind of niggle when he has a nail embedded in his skull? So I hope that gives you a wee bit more insight into just how important the brain and the perception of the situation is when we're thinking in terms of pain. Because it's really crucial, especially when we're talking about persistent pain. But even if you think of another example, imagine, not quite as dramatic as the big nails getting stuck in faces and boots and whatever. But imagine you're out walking about, or you're out somewhere nice for the day, with your family or your friends. You're having a nice time, maybe having some lunch. You get up and you bump into the table, for example. You maybe bump your knee or bump your hip off the table. And oh, goodness sakes, there we go, bump my leg. It's not that big a deal. You carry on and you enjoy the rest of your time. But imagine another situation where maybe you're running late, it's raining, you've not got enough fuel in your car, you haven't completed your work that you needed to submit, you've still got a report to finish, there's emails coming in, and you stand up at your table and you whack your knee off the table. your response there is probably slightly different to when you're out having a lovely lunch with your friends. You're probably going to have a lot more discomfort in your knee. You're probably going to react completely differently. And again, it's because of the, you're not in any more danger in that situation, but your level of alertness is higher. And remember, we've talked a wee bit about that, about anything that puts your brain into that kind of higher state of alert. So in your stressful, busy day, your brain's already in that slightly elevated position, and then add in something like a whack in the knee. Oh, my knee, oh, it's really sore. Oh my goodness. Oh. The frustration, the anger, all that's going to be there, compared to bumping your knee to the same extent, but you're in a nice, relaxed environment. Maybe had a wee glass of wine, you're chatting with your friends, it's lovely and warm and sunny day. Oh, you're probably hardly going to even notice it. Okay, so it's just, again, it's just trying to think about how pain is much more than just the sensation that you're feeling. It's always got that bigger picture. There's always the backstory. The brain's always involved and the body's always involved. So there's always these 3 dimensions going on. So that's just some other examples to let you think about. See, the 2 about the construction workers are very widely cited, so you may well have heard of them before. But just have a wee think about it and see if you can notice how these things maybe impact on your own perception of pain and different sensations as you go about your day. Okay, I'll leave you for now and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.